artist joining us tonight, but it's going to be a tight group, so that's the best format. Actually, we love to sit with all of you as if we were sitting at the dinner table and have this conversation. And it's such a treat that we have Sherry and Jay. And my understanding is that you've sung many times before together, but it was the first time you did Pergolesi. So what was your experience this time?
Well, I'll go first before Sherry says nice things, because she always says wonderful, thoughtful things. And this is my chance to jump in beforehand. We've been singing together off and on for, I would say, almost 20 years at this point. And at some point, if we're not to that point yet, we will be soon. And we've sung so many different duet things together over the years. But somehow this piece has always escaped the programming aspect of things. And I wondered very much what it would be like. And I suspected it would be just fine. And what I discovered within the first 5 minutes of rehearsing is that it felt right. It felt like the piece has never felt in the past doing it with other people. So it felt like a realization of what I had always hoped that the piece could be, everything from the tempi to the interchange of the voice parts, even the length of the appoggiaturas and the trills. It felt like what I had always hoped for it to be. Sorry, I have a puppy who's barking in the background.
No, I absolutely have to echo Jay. It felt so natural. I mean, we're so fortuitous, as as Jay said, we've been singing together. I'm not sure it's quite 20 years, but it's close. It's maybe 17, something like that. And in addition to sort of having then kind of grown up, we sort of started our careers around the same time, and we're singing in a group together in Illinois. But in addition to that, we both also went to Yale and had some of the same teachers, so we've had very similar training. Which means we come from, a similar school of thought, not only with our training, but also with our practice. And singing with Jay is always just such a musical and sensitive experience. Unlike Jay, I had absolutely no doubts what it was going to be like. I knew it was going to be fabulous. I knew it was going to feel easy singing together. I think we have such a similar sense of how the voices interplay and what to bring out, and how we shape and phrase things similarly. So it was, as always, just a fabulous experience.
It certainly sounded fabulous, as if you were rehearsing for days and weeks, and your voices just match so beautifully. And like every phrase, every sound you make is saturated with such complex emotion. It's simply sublime. You will hear that. So how was it for Matthew? You've worked with Jay and Sherry before, but it was also the first time you did Stabat Mater here with Ars Lyrica, right?
Yes, I think the first time I've ever done it. So it was a pleasure to venture this piece with two people who have sung it before, who know it well, and who did a beautiful job. It was a pleasure to get to know it this way. Under strange circumstances of, a pandemic and a sort of slight quarantine, being separated physically from people when you're taping something like this is never the easiest thing to do. But we've learned over the last several months how to communicate sort of telepathically, beyond our usual range. And it seemed to work okay. It was a pleasure to have both of them in, as well as Adam Lamott, concertmaster, and a great group of players. So I'm a happy camper this weekend.
The recording session was just magical, and every piece was just such a treat. So Erika, James, and Deborah, you've probably played this piece before, right? But not with those soloists. And whenever you play a famous work like this, do you feel that every time with different conductor you recreate this piece again? How was the Friday's recording session for you?
you've played before.
I think you're absolutely right, Kinga, and coming from a singer's background, that's always often the case. It's never boring. Every time you play it again, it's completely different work. There's always another facet that's added to the experience. And I hope that we do get to do it again where we can have the singers inside the ensemble. I think it will be maybe even more different for the audience in the future. And, you know, when we're all together again in a setting, a live setting, all of us. In the meantime, what we can do with the video is quite remarkable. And I was really impressed with how quickly the ensemble was able to adapt on Friday. And, you know, for instance, the Mozart was in one take. We didn't have to go back. And that was really fun to have the whole group on board. So let me pass it off the baton to someone else to talk about from an instrumentalist perspective on this concert.
I don't know. The music wasn't completely familiar to me before, but it was all beautiful, and it was, you know, it's obviously Baroque, but then something would happen where it's a little unusual. It was catchy, and then there's just a quirky cadence, and then I felt they were all too short. There was such amazing ideas, and it was, you know, and then, oh, it's over, next one. So it's like a potpourri, really. I really got fond of the piece. I knew one of the first movement very well, of course, but there's number 8 or 9, the fugue one, which is super fun.
Erika, have you played it before? For me, this was a first also. I have not played this piece, so.
It was very, very familiar. And at this point in my career, I certainly could have played it before. However, I have not played it before in anything other than like a gig environment. And I had not played it before Baroque. For me, I was very astonished on how well the singers, you guys, you just sang it. And we needed to learn how to do some of the intricacies, but you know, there was never a case where, oh, you do this, oh, you do, I mean, like that we had to stop or anything. I mean, it was just beautifully, it ran beautifully, but I found it a little bit challenging to be far away from people. And it will certainly be, it'll certainly be very joyous when we get to be closer to each other. But it was a wonderful experience. I mean, to be able to make such high quality music and to be able to, you know, feel it being actually there with everybody else was just lovely.
One of the other things about videotaping stuff that involves this many people, even when you're in charge of the ensemble, normally the conductor has the best seat in the house because you have all the performers right there in front of you. You can hear exactly what's going on. But in a project like this, not so. I got a great idea of how it all sounded yesterday when I proofed the video, but that was the first time I actually heard everything.
So maybe with your collective wealth of expertise here, please tell us what we should listen for in Stabat Mater. What's your favorite moment or favorite aria, or what's especially poignant? Some, you know, listening tips for us as we go into the broadcast in 15 minutes.
Well, the first movement is, of course, you know, very famous. It's probably the most sort of well-known movement of the work, and it's got all of these just incredible suspensions. You know, it's got these moments where there's tension and then release, and tension and release constantly, which is a big sort of hallmark of the Baroque style. But it's done here in just such a beautiful, spinning legato way. You know, it just makes for quite a magical opening, I think, to the piece. The voices are so close together, the string parts are so close together. You know, you sort of one one voice emerges from the other voice. We sort of hand off the baton to each other constantly in that opening movement, which is just really beautiful. And then it sort of alternates between arias and duets for each of us. And I don't know if if Jay has this has the same experience, but when I'm listening, when I'm in a performance and then I get to sit for a minute and not just listen and not be a part of it, those are the moments that always stick in my head. So I've been having Jay's arias constantly running through my head all weekend, because I'm listening sort of I finally get to just sit back and listen, and it's such a wonderful moment. And I think his sort of final, the last of the three arias that he does is sort of really slow and sustained, and it's absolutely one of my favorites. The Fakut Adeat is gorgeous.
I can echo what you said about when you get to go out into the room and to listen. And those are the moments that really lodge in your head. And for me, there are several moments that are like that just get caught in my head like an earworm. Usually they're not, those moments haven't been so well executed as they are when Sherry sings them. There's a particularly favorite moment of mine that I actually said to her the other day. The text is in Die Judicii, where she sings that text about the day of judgment. And the vocal line that Pergolesi has written is this kind of triumphant, almost, there's an opportunity for an almost trumpet-like trill at the top of it. And I've heard it done very well over the years, but I don't think I've ever heard it done with such aplomb and gracefulness and ease and beauty at the same time. And so that's one of those moments that where I'm particularly glad that's been preserved for all time in some sort of video medium, because I go back and listen to that again and again and again when my opinion of humanity is slipping. That may be one of the moments that I find redemptive in the whole thing. So there's a vocal moment in there in the soprano line that's it goes by at almost lightning speed, but it should be. It should be looked at and glorified by what it is. It's really terrific. The other thing that I like so much about the piece is the way that the string writing and the continuo part interact with one another. And in this case, one of the things in the rehearsal process that I guess the audiences don't really get to watch, but that we artists in the rehearsal process get to watch a lot of, are the interactions back and forth between the various continuo players. And in this case, you have Matthew and Daryl working back and forth from two very different keyboard continuo instruments, kind of trying to sort out what works in a particular moment, or what thing best serves the text or the affect of the music in a particular moment. And sometimes it's incredibly precise. There's a figure that Matthew and Daryl were talking about the other day that's for running eighth notes, and there was a long not long, but there was a debate about how those needed to be treated and what the best approach was given the instruments that they were playing. And I loved watching the interaction back and forth between the two of them in the rehearsal process, and I'm excited to see how that comes out in the final recording process, because harpsichord has a very different sound to it than a portatif organ does. And when you have the opportunity to have both and to have them really thinking about interacting in the way that I think they did all throughout the week is really I'm fascinated by minutia. I never get bored, but boy, in those moments, there's a lot of artistry to see back and forth. And part of it is because of the fact that it's so collaborative right from the beginning. And then those string players, just wonderful work. By the way, it's so nice to see your faces instead of just your eyes for a change after a week.
You too. Well, at least you got to see you some.
You usually see the back of my head, which is not the best thing.
I do have to sort of compliment both Matthew and the string players. There's so much doubling in this piece. You know, there's the strings are very, very often doubling the voices. And somehow between the string players and Matthew, that was so well communicated, you know, that I felt that we were always approaching it, you know, they were always listening so carefully to how we were shaping it. We were responding to how they were introducing an idea. And I particularly appreciated how well that was done and collectively from the players and from Matthew. So thank you for that. It made it very easy for us.
I might add that what Sherry suggested is very true about this piece. It's a half an hour, maybe 35 minutes, and it manages to kind of summarize so many different musical styles all at once, from old-fashioned style counterpoint in at least a couple of the movements where you kind of are half expecting an old chant line to reappear in the middle of the texture somewhere and it doesn't, to this very modern kind of operatic style writing that sounds like it was lifted directly out of one of Pergolesi's own comic operas. It's a little bewildering, actually, to go straight through, but a very satisfying piece to both listen to and to play.